years ago, my wife Rebecca and I discovered that we were pregnant with twins. Life has been a roller coaster ever since. When Aaron and Isaac were first born, they were a little premature. Their lungs were not functioning properly, and thanks to quick thinking by our outstanding pediatrician, Dr. Schomer, they got the treatment they needed, and they avoided a trip to the neonatal ICU. During that touch-and-go time, the twins had been separated from each other, and they decided to put them together so that they were touching, and what happened was their heart rate stabilized, their breathing stabilized, and they had a pretty quick turnaround. It was amazing. They reached out for each other. We even have a great picture of Isaac sucking on Aaron's nose. And he must have been doing that all along, because have you seen how long Aaron's nose is? No, that's... Now, we had heard during that pregnancy that twins have a unique connection, and here that was being confirmed within minutes of their birth. I'm glad that they seem to get along so well, but we'll be talking about some twins this morning that didn't get along so well. Open your Bibles, please, to Genesis chapter 25. It can be found on page 24 of your backseat Bibles. So we're all the way back to the beginning. Genesis is the first book of the Bible. Its name means beginning or the start. So if the Bible had a sign, it would read, "Start here" in Genesis. And we pick up the story in Genesis chapter 25, beginning in verse 19. This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Now remember, Abraham and Sarah had to wait for a while for their son Isaac. Abraham was 100 years old, Sarah was 90 years old, and here's what happens with Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean, from Paddan Aram, and sister of Laban, the Aramean. So those are in lands to the east of where they're at. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. Does this sound familiar at all to Abraham and Sarah? I mean, 20 years go by that they're married, and so he prays, and the Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. Now, Rebekah, did you have to ask that question? Why is this happening to me? Before we knew we were having twins, things were a little bit different. And Doc said, "Are you sure you got this timing down right?" We're like, "Yeah, we're pretty sure." And when they went to do the ultrasound just in the office, they couldn't get a very good reading because Rebekah kept laughing as soon as they found out that they were twins. So why is this happening to me? And they certainly jostled around inside of her. It almost reminded me of that scene from Alien. You know, you have the babies and there's arms and legs and feet, and they're pushing and moving around and all this. And she probably asked that, "Why is this happening to me?" And now we've both asked that, "Why is this happening to me?" Well, the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb." Hey, how would that be? You don't have to go for an ultrasound. Just inquire of the Lord, and He tells you that you're going to have twins. That is just awesome. Two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Now, we don't know that God caused this to happen, but God, in His providence, can look down the road and see all of those scenarios and all of those angles, and He knows what's going to happen, and He's giving Rebekah a heads up concerning her babies. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. So finally we see this outplaying of God's plan from Abraham and Sarah through to Isaac and now to Esau and Jacob. And the first has lots of hair. Have you seen some of those babies like that? That you just go, "Oh, he has so much hair." I mean, some of them are practically bald, and others, they have this big mass of hair, and he's a hairy one. Esau literally means hairy. And his brother Jacob is literally right on his heels. Jacob means heel grabber. Or to put it another way, he's a tripper-upper, a deceiver, a conniver, a schemer, a shyster. You don't want to cross him. He'll take every opportunity to get ahead. He's always working an angle to keep you down and make sure that he comes out on top. And he struggles with Esau in the womb. Jacob grabs Esau's heel as if to say, "Get out of my way. Here I come, world." He's trying to pull him out of the way. So, hey, I want to go first. Here. He wants to be number one, and even from birth, we see that Jacob is struggling and striving to get ahead. And as we'll see, his actions in adulthood prove that his name is accurate. He lives up to his name of heel grabber, tripper upper, conniver, deceiver, schemer, shyster. He's that kind of guy. Verse 27. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we see some unhealthy family dynamics going on here. In fact, somebody asked us one night, well, which twin do you like better? We said, let me respond with a question. Are you dumb? No. Why, we don't love one more than the other, but some people do. Some people do, and this is what happens here in this case. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he's also called Edom. And probably he didn't say it like that. If he was really exhausted and famished and starving, he would have been, a little tired. "Give me some of that red stew, quick. I need some right now. I'm going to die." Esau, he's called Edom. Esau means hairy. Edom means red. Esau's nickname is quite literally red. And it seems like we have someone around here. Robbie Fitzwater might fit that bill. He's an outdoorsman. He likes the open country, which is why he's headed to Camp Cornhusker today to work for 4 weeks as a ranger out at Scout Camp. He dresses in overalls, he drives a pickup truck, and wears pliers on his belt. He is that guy, okay? Daniel's kind of that guy, which is why he's going as Robbie's assistant for this summer. And Esau is that guy. He's been out hunting. Red, he loves the great outdoors. Jake, on the other hand, he's more of a mama's boy. He's content to hang out around the kitchen a little bit. And I got to wonder, does birth order really matter in this whole thing? I mean, we make such a big deal, and in that culture it was huge. The birthright was a huge deal. But really, Esau's born just a few minutes ahead of Jacob, right? That's how it happens. They share the same birthday. And as is common with twins, parents need to divide and conquer. Okay, you get one, I'll get the other. We experience this, and we get to see this probably in their time. Isaac loves Esau more. Hey, I'll take him, I'll change him. All right, well, I'll get Jake's diaper. Red is more athletic, so Isaac teaches him how to hunt. That would have been more of a one-on-one activity in my experience. And so by the time he gets done with Esau, Jacob is with Mama. "Oh, that's fine. I don't really need to go." And he kind of says, "Esau, you catch him, I'll clean him." That sort of thing. Rebekah takes Jacob under her wing and teaches him how to cook, and he's graduated all the way to red stew. Now, in the original language, I'm pretty sure that word is chili. He's making chili over this open fire. A big pot of chili is simmering over the fire. Have you ever cooked chili over an open fire? And you know how good that tastes? That is just wonderful. I mean, the smells must have been out of this world. And here comes Esau in from the field, and he's hunting, and he's come up dry, and he's got nothing. They probably used meat from Esau's last kill to make that chili, and he hauls his tired carcass into camp and asks, "What's for dinner?" "Well, nothing. Tell you, sell me your birthright." "Come on, Jake, I'm dying here. Help a brother out." And he won't. He says, "Promise." Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is a birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear first." Well, doesn't that sound like brothers? We've had 2 sons that are brothers that they seem to, for years they fought over shotgun. Who gets to call shotgun first? That's who gets to sit in the front seat. Well, pinky swear. It's not enough to swear. You have to cross your heart and pinky swear and all that stuff. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Not much conversation around that dinner table, is there? He ate and drank, and then he got up and left. More like he storms off to his own tent without saying a word. Jake's chili wasn't really that great to begin with. Like I said, Jacob's wily. He's a swindler, a shyster, a con artist. You take your pick of descriptors. They all point to Jacob's character or his lack of character. To the point where he would rip off his brother, who's willing to die who's ready to die of starvation. I mean, what kind of person does that? A person like Jacob. Well, time has a way of creeping up on you, and it happens with Jacob and Esau as well. Esau lets Jacob trick him out of his inheritance for a measly bowl of stew, and it wasn't the last time that would happen. Over the years, that seed of bitterness and discontent grows and produces even more fruit of deception. Look over in Genesis 27, verse 1. We'll kind of follow this story through here. When Isaac was old and his eyes were weak so he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I'm now an old man, and I don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out in the open country, hunt some wild game for me, prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it back to me to eat, so I may give you a blessing before I die." Now, that sounds like a reasonable request, doesn't it? You know, last meal here before he dies. Guys on death row get that much respect. And, well, Rebecca overhears the conversation, and she cooks up a little plan of her own to trick Isaac into giving Esau's blessing to Jacob. She's trying to manipulate things, too, behind the scenes. She knew what God had said, and she knew that Jacob would rule over Esau, but she doesn't trust him with that. She feels like she has to get involved in that scenario. We probably know other people like that. I could imagine it burned Isaac just a little bit that Jacob stole that birthright. I mean, he loved Esau more, and here Jacob steals that from him. Jacob, well, he didn't love him so much. At least he can do this. He can give Esau a proper blessing before he dies. That is until Rebekah and Jacob put their heads together and she cooks up the food, and just the way Isaac likes it, real tasty, and lays a goat skin across Jacob's arms so they'd be hairy, and dresses him in Esau's clothes, which would have had that outdoorsy smell to them. He pretends to be Esau, even letting Isaac feel his goat hairy skin. Isaac says, "Come here, my son, kiss me." So he does. And it says, when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed Jacob and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, and abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game so you may give me your blessing." His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I'm your son," he answered, "your firstborn, Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that came and hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry. He said, "Bless me, me too, father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he's taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, now he's taken my blessing." And he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, I've made him lord over you, and made all his servants, his relatives, his servants, and I've sustained him with grain and new wine, so what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me too." Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You'll live by the sword, and you'll serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke off your neck." Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And even more than that, he goes on to swear that as soon as Isaac dies, he's going to go and kill his brother. Wouldn't this just be a classic movie scene? Down to Isaac trembling violently. "Not again! What have I done? Bless me, Father, bless me." Well, Jacob, he goes on the lam. He flees the country. He heads east to find a wife. And on the way, he lays down to rest, and he uses a rock for a pillow. And God appears to him. He sees this vision in a dream. It's Jacob's ladder, you've probably heard. I envision it more like Jacob's escalator, going up and coming down, angels ascending and descending. And God reaffirms his covenant with Jacob, that all people on earth will be blessed through him. And Jacob calls the place Bethel, which means house of God. So all this struggle that he's had in life, all this manipulating and all of these things and striving to get ahead, God simply chooses to bless Jacob anyway. Despite Jacob's striving, despite Jacob's swindling, he didn't need to do all that. God was guiding the process the entire time. That's how God said it was going to happen. Finally, Jacob looks up long enough to honor God. But then it's back to nose to the grindstone, back to doing things his own way until he runs into someone who'll give him a run from his money. The man's name is Laban. Laban is Jacob's uncle, brother to his mother Rebekah. He has a couple of daughters, farmers' daughters, as it turns out. Jake really likes the younger one, Rachel. She's pretty cute. Laban says, well, sure, you can marry my daughter. That's fine. You got to work for me, though, for 7 years. And so he does. He agrees to that. Obviously, he's not thinking with his shrewd mind at this point. Okay? He's thinking with his heart. And he really wants to get married to this woman. So the text actually says that those 7 years only seemed like a few days to him because of his love for her. This is where we say, he just really thought she was great. And he worked for 7 years, and then Jacob said to Laban, and this is what the text says, give me my wife. My time is completed. I want to make love to her. Well, I would imagine. He's been working for years in the field. She's been coming and pouring sweet tea, for lunch, and it's about time that they get hitched. Only Laban does the old switcheroo at the altar. Now we say, well, how could this happen here? Well, they had to wear a very thick veil, and so you would not see the other person. Obviously, when Jacob comes to the altar, he expects it to be Rachel, but it's in fact Leah. She's the older sister, and so instead of marrying the beautiful one with the nice figure, and the text actually says that, he has to marry the one with Coke bottle glasses. She couldn't see very well. You make the connection. It's too late to take it back, but Jacob still wants Rachel, so he finishes his week-long honeymoon with Leah, and then he promptly gets married to Rachel, which is fine, only there are some contractual obligations. He has to work another 7 years for Laban. And you got to think, at this point, Jacob's really not happy about this. He is the one who does the swindling. Okay, he's the one. But it runs in the family, it runs in his blood, and Laban has a lot of that too. And he literally has got his goat at this point. And I would imagine he's pretty upset that the tables have been turned. But during that time, that 14 years, I can just imagine he's plotting and he's scheming and he's going to get his revenge on that Laban. And he completes his 14 years and then he continues to participate in the family business. And he has a boatload of children, 11 at this point, born to Leah and Rachel and their handmaidens. Jacob also greatly increases Laban's flocks and herds, and Laban recognizes that God is blessing him because of his relationship with Jacob. But now that Jacob has a family, it's time for him to get his. And he approaches Laban. Laban, there's some goats out there and some sheep that are really kind of subpar animals. They're speckled and they're spotted. And, I'd be more than happy to take those off your hands and build my own herd out of that. And Laban says, well, that'll work. And they both go away pretty happy because, Laban gets to get rid of his subpar livestock, and Jacob is like, hey, I got to manipulate this for my own ends. And that's exactly what he does. Well, Laban, he separates out all the speckled, spotted, or streaked animals, and he sends them with Jacob. Puts a 3 days journey between the two of them, so they have their own flocks and herds. And Jacob's pretty ecstatic about this process. And what he does is he lays down some animal-looking camouflage in their drinking troughs. So he takes these branches and he strips some of the bark off of them so that there's white spots on the bark. I'm envisioning like a sycamore tree or an oak tree, something like that. And then he puts them down in their drinking troughs when they come. So he thinks that he's attracting the right animals to come and mate in this particular area. Now, if the animals are strong, that when they show up to the drinking troughs, then Jacob lays out the branches so they mate. And if they're weak, then he withholds them so they don't mate. Does this technique work? It sounds like a bunch of hogwash to me. Doesn't it to you? I mean, don't we know a thing or two about genetics these days? When animals look at speckled, spotted, or streaked camouflage, do they produce speckled, spotted, and streaked young? Does it matter what they look at while they're mating? Is that really important? Does that really matter? And can a critter tell a female critter from a bunch of branches? I think they probably can. So it sounds a little bit weird. What an animal looks at while it's mating does not determine what color that animal is going to be. That's idiotic. To us, anyway. Now, Laban had already admitted the Lord had blessed him because of Jacob. And Jacob was doing a stellar job as a lead shepherd. Laban's herds, they were being just multiplied beyond measure. God was already blessing him, and God continues to bless him. Why does Jacob feel the need to manipulate this process? And why does he think it's going to make a difference? He gets an A for effort, but his efforts don't mean anything. And the key to this is over in Genesis 31, verse 10. 31:10. And Jacob tells about a vision that he had, a dream. He's telling his wives, in breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. And the angel of the Lord said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I've seen all that Laban has been doing to you. So God knows how genetics work, right? He's saying, Jacob, you just got to look up and see. Here's the real clue. Jacob, I was sending the speckled, spotted, and streaked animals to you and allowing them to be the ones that mated. And it had nothing to do with those branches. And it had everything to do that I just wanted to pour out my blessing on you. He's telling you to look up and understand that you're a part of something bigger and greater than yourself. Stop trying to manipulate everything. It had nothing to do with the mossy oak camouflage around the drinking trough. It didn't matter. It had everything to do with the fact that God was causing the animals to mate that would most benefit Jacob. And all of his striving and struggling and manipulating, it was for nothing. Eventually, Laban gets sick and tired of being ripped off by his son-in-law, or that's how it seems. And Jacob recognizes this change in attitude, so he decides to take his wives, which are Laban's daughters. And he decides to take his 11 sons and his one daughter, and they're going to go away. Well, these are Laban's grandchildren. And he's going to take his flocks and herds. And how did he get his flocks and herds? Out of Laban's flocks and herds. And he thinks that he's pretty good at this point. Wily old Jacob, he thinks he has made out pretty well. And all because of his own efforts, because of his hard work and his knowledge and his wisdom, his strength, his intelligence, or so he thinks. But he's about to get a wake-up call. Ironically, it happens at night. Genesis 32:22. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. Even here, Jacob's trying to manipulate this situation. If you dig a little bit deeper, you see that he's on his way to meet his brother Esau, and he's scared. So what does he do? He sends all of his children first, his servants, his wives, his possessions, his flocks and herds, so that surely those will soften Esau's heart when they get to each other. But in the meantime, Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. And the man saw that he could not overpower him. He touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. And the man said, let me go, for it's daybreak. He's like, haven't we done this long enough? Even with an injury, that guy, Jacob, would not quit. He kept going. I've seen that happen during a wrestling match when Daniel broke the guy's collarbone and the kid couldn't go on. And it was pretty ugly, and Daniel felt really bad about it. Jacob's one tough guy. I mean, he wrenches his hip out of socket, and he keeps going. He's not going to give up. Tells you a little bit about his tenacity. He replies, I won't let go unless you bless me. Now he's literally trying to wrench a blessing from the hand of God. It's a classic fight to the death, no holds barred wrestling match. The man asked him, what's your name? Jacob, he answered. The man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you've struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. And again, Jacob's been trying to work all the angles, scheming to get ahead, striving to make a name for himself. Instead, God gives him a new name and says, you know what, I'm going to work with you and deal with you in a new way. Jacob, the schemer, the deceiver, the conniver, the manipulator, becomes Israel, which means God contends or God prevails. And God is telling him, Jacob, you no longer have to manipulate your way through life, leaving a trail of broken relationships. Just let me do the work. I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Stop trying to rely on your own strength and intelligence. Look up and let go. Jacob, now Israel, is intrigued. Who is this man who dares tell him what to do? Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. He's like, you already know my name. Come on. It's the Son of God he's wrestling with. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Why would that be important? Because they viewed that site as being holy, that he had literally been touched by God. Jacob gets the message, and he's transformed into Israel. God prevails. And he leads a nation that would produce the Holy One of God, God's one and only Son, who would be born into this world and called Jesus. At this point, it's a son. Before he's named Jesus, he wrestles with Israel and leaves behind a walking object lesson, this noticeable limp, a daily reminder that in weakness, God reveals his strength. And that's what leads us to our challenge time today. I don't know what you've been striving for in life. Maybe like Jacob, you've just been trying to get ahead. Anything to benefit yourself, working all the angles, striving, straining, scheming, manipulating. Maybe it has to do with your job. Maybe it has to do with money. Maybe it has to do with your family and trying to manipulate things there. Maybe it even has to do with ministry that has somehow taken a dark side. It's time to stop all that and to be still and to cease striving and rest in the confidence that God has everything under control. If you're one of those people that tries to control and manipulate every little thing, God, I believe, is telling you that today. Just stop that. Stop that. Stop trying to be in control. Stop trying to run the show. Just let God do his thing. Look up, let go, and leave it in God's hands. Will you follow his lead? Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we come before you today recognizing that you have a greater and grander scheme than we can possibly imagine or dream up. The things that you're dealing with are on such a scale, God, that it is literally mind-boggling to us. Forgive us for trying to take control of every little detail, trying to manipulate, trying to scheme, trying to plot and plan, so consumed with worry about things, Father, that we can't trust you. Get rid of those things in our life and give us the ability to give our whole heart over to you, to stop doing what Jacob has done, and to take on a new name and a new identity, one that grows out of our trust in our faith in you. Help us to look up to you, to stop trying to put our head down and just work, and try to manipulate everything to our own end. Just look up and let you handle things. And that's what we want to do this morning. And Father, as recognize there may be people who have not made that decision to follow you. They haven't bothered to even look up. And God, if somebody is out there this morning that really needs to know you, would you reveal yourself to them in a meaningful way? And prove yourself to be faithful, that they might come to place their hope and their trust in you. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.